Originality is painful. It's rare enough to even come up with something new, but then there's the whole blood, sweat, and brain cells that go into bringing it into existence. It gets worse though, because the Germans have already invented everything. So yeah, it's pain all the way down. But do we give up? No, we're still too attached to our ideas. So we take a deep breath, pivot, and persist. Welcome back to Inheritance Machining. I'm making a radius turner for the lathe, but not this one. This one's boring, and it only really makes balls. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I just like other kinds of curves. So a couple years ago I stumbled into the idea to use a train wheel type mechanism, and I spent the better part of that time in analysis paralysis trying to figure out how to make it happen. That is until my last video when I decided to just dive in. And I got this far, and I also discovered, thanks to a few helpful commenters, the Germans beat me to it. So yeah, a devastating blow, right in the Knuths. But this would explain why I never found it during my extensive Google searching. The existing one does leave a bit to be desired in the attractiveness department, and maybe there's a cooler way to make it work. So I'm going to move forward anyway. If for no other reason then, I still want to be able to turn some nice radii. With the adjustment spindles finished from the last video, let's work on how to hold them in the lathe. I'd really like it if this tool could just pop right down on the tool post like all my others, so I'll be doing that. But this does come with some obstacles, so I'll just start on the base plate these spindles will spin in. I got some 4140 here, which despite being stronger than carbon steel was less expensive, and it should also be fairly rust resistant. More importantly though, it's oversized, so I can make the finish look way better than this. That's a lot better. Now let's poke some holes in it. The first two here on the right will be for some mounting bolts, but something isn't looking right. Got the dimensions flipped. I don't really want to start over, so hopefully this will just go away. Yeah, she'll be aight. The other two holes will be for the spindles themselves, well, the bushings for those spindles. They're much larger than my biggest drill, but this is fine because I need the diameter and spacing of these two holes as accurate as possible. And I hate to be a bore, but this is the best way to do that. Admittedly, it's a bit exciting watching this boring head take some chonky cuts, though Satan's spaghetti fork is kind of annoying. As I near the final size, I'll take lighter and lighter cuts until I hit the dimension dead on, which will be 1/1000th of an inch smaller than the bushings themselves for a mild press fit. But this isn't the only bushing I need to consider here. There are thrust bushings too, so let's face it, we still have some more work to do here. Now this looks like a boring head, but this is a completely new tool. Well, not new, but I've never used a facing head before, despite literally having 4 of them for some reason. The idea here is very similar to a boring head, except when I spin this ring, it advances the adjustment screw in the diameter it cuts. Or to put it another way, when I hold the ring while the tool is spinning, it moves the cutter across the face. I want it to stop at a specific point though, so with each click I know the diameter increases 5 thou, so I can just count the clicks and let go when I hit that point. I don't want to have to count to 104 every time though, so this adjustable stop will disengage the feed mechanism once it's tripped. Then it's just a matter of working my way down little by little until I hit the right depth, though it does generally help to make sure everything's tight. The vertical wall still needs cleaning up though, so I can lock the facing head and just feed it like a normal boring head to take care of that. Then just do all that again on the other hole. This is going to be the outward facing side of this part, and right now it's looking pretty square. And square is boring. So let's swank it up. This is the Volstro rotary milling head, and in a way it's a lot like the radius turner I'm making. It takes a machine that normally cuts in straight lines and adds a radial element to it, meaning it can cut curves. And as we've already established, I like curves, so I'm going to give this part an hourglass figure. I'll start with just clearing away a scallop in the middle section, working my way down the part. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, cranking this tiny handle is surprisingly exhausting, but I'm prepared thanks to our new sponsor, Element. Element is a zero-sugar, science-backed electrolyte drink mix that's free of artificial colors and other dodgy substances. And that's where I'll stop using their taglines because I can just tell you from my own experience how great this stuff is. I've been drinking Element daily for the last 4 months. Honestly, I have it at least 3 times a day, and I've definitely noticed it's doing something. Flavors aside, which are all freaking great, I've noticed a much better balance of energy throughout my day. Generally just less fatigue and a clearer mind even after standing in the shop for hours on end. I have no problem dragging my ass to the gym in the evenings, where weirdly enough I just feel stronger during and less sore after than I used to. And I sleep like a freaking baby. Apparently there's a lot of new science behind sodium to potassium ratios and magnesium levels that suggests the government's one-size-fits-all approach to nutrition just doesn't cut it. Whatever the case, Element seems to be onto something and I'm here for it. Especially with the new limited summer-only run of their lemonade flavor. So try lemonade salt and get your free Element sample pack with any purchase when you order through my link, drinklmnt.com/inheritance. Using the opposite side as a reference, I can indirectly measure the radius I just cut and see that I'm bang on. And it just so happens that the other side is the same setting. This one's much deeper though, and while it makes my hourglass lopsided, there's a purpose for this madness. Remember I mentioned some of the obstacles with mounting this tool on the tool post? Well, here's the first. Because of how low everything needs to sit, I need some clearance for this corner of the compound slide, and it has to clear for all angle settings. So the best way to do that is to take a big bite out of the backside of this plate. Lastly are the outer facing corners, which are much smaller, so I'll approach these differently, working my way in with a rotary head rather than down. I'll switch to a finishing mill to smooth out the transitions, and of course immediately up by going the wrong direction. Yeah, that's not going to pass. But what do we do in the face of struggle? We persist. And by that I mean we change it. This radius was completely arbitrary anyway, so by recutting the outer radii a little deeper on each side so they match, I can gradually work the middle and blend it away. Like it never even happened. This just leaves the bottom side, which is pretty self-explanatory. One spindle base plate ready for action, so let's put some stuff together. As masochistic as I tend to be, I wasn't a fan of making the bushings too. I've already got enough on my plate. But as luck would have it, the ones I bought don't quite jive with each other. I need this one to fit inside this one, so we lathe. A couple of parallels square things up, a skim pass on the ID, and viola. Then just rinse and repeat. Alright, let's put these together. Like I said, this is a press fit for the bushing, so to the press. And to keep everything undinged up, I'll protect it with some softer aluminum. Now the thrust bushings go on here like this, but it's not all that important that they stay put, because the spindles will do that. But not yet, because they still need some fine tuning. When I made them, I left them a smidge oversized, partly because I didn't have the bushings at the time, and mostly because I didn't have the bushings at the time. But now that I can properly measure them in place, we should be able to nail the fit. And I've had plenty of time to think about the best way to do this. I'll start by holding onto one in a collet, which should be fairly concentric. And the indicator agrees, so I'll center drill the end. Now I can put the part between centers, which is the best way to guarantee it's held straight and unstressed while I home in on the final diameter. Nice. Okay, we got some parts together, but we're still a long way off from making this functional, so let's get back to the mounting. I'll make the tool post mounting block next, which means more steel, only this time I went pre-hard 4140. This one should be around Rockwell's C25, which isn't as hard as it could be, but will do the job. For real though, I'm mostly thinking in terms of durability, where this part's dovetail will see a lot of wear. But we'll get to that in a bit, because the bandsaw operator didn't do the best job getting this square. Alright, we got that to size, so let's do the most important part first, the dovetail. It's not a very efficient cutter though, so I'll save that for when it's really needed and hog away most of the material with a roughing mill. Okay, now the angled bits. Along with cutting the actual slanted face, I'm also cutting the finished depth at the bottom. This isn't important so much for the function as it is for measuring the dovetails. I need the depth to be at the right location, so when I drop a gauge pin in here to confirm the location of the slanted face, I know it's right where it should be. And the other side is the same deal. After also chamfering the inner corners for clearance, I can stand this up for some hole poking. First some drilling and tapping right in the middle for a height adjustment screw. Then some clearance holes for bolt shanks with counterbores to hide their heads. This time getting the orientation right. Now I need to do some work on the left face, but I'm worried with how off-center this is in the vise, it will try to run away from me when I start cutting, and that wouldn't be fun. Exciting, but not fun. But if I stack something up that's the exact same width on the other side, like some gauge blocks, all should be fine. I want a couple scallops over the full height of this face, and the Volstro would work for this, but my arm is still recovering from earlier, so I'll let the boring head earn its keep for a while. Setting the radius is just a matter of referencing a known face, offsetting from there the radius I want, and adjusting it out until it just tickles the surface. It's of utmost importance that the finished surface is mint AF, so I'll switch the insert to a fresh edge before taking the last passes. And naturally pop a bevel mill in here, because chamfers. And that's that. This will mount to the base plate, except I didn't order the right bolts? Awesome. Well, I guess, yeah, let's just make the next part while we wait for McMaster order number 37 to arrive. This hunk of steel is going to make up the connecting arm / tool holder that will go on the top of the assembly. And as you probably could have guessed, it needs to be squared up first. This one's got some big holes like the others, so first smaller pilot holes are drilled, making the job easier for the big boy. But again, it's not big enough or accurate enough, so boring head.
No.
So much for that. Got a bit carried away and well,
No.
that's not exactly a press fit. But let's keep going so I can work out any other mistakes I might make. Alright, got that one spot on. So now I can face these just like I did on the base plate. The other side, which is actually the top side, gets a little more decoration. I'll start by roughing it all out with the end mill, and then using a fly cutter for the finishing passes to make it purty. Yup, that's purty. I said before that this is a tool holder as well, so let's cut the slot for that. I'll use an end mill a size smaller than the final width I want this to be. That way I don't have to worry about tool deflection cutting this wider than I want. Then I'll home in on the width by milling the sides independently. And while we're here, might as well. Alright, back flat we can drill and tap the set screw holes for holding the cutting tool in place. And I'm going to do both ends because, well, I'd like to be able to use both ends. There's the potential this could be used for radiusing bores with a boring bar, which sounds like an uncommon scenario, but I'm pretty good at designing myself into such situations. Anyway, the last of these holes is a counterbore on this side as well, but being that it's much deeper than this width, I'll use the boring head for most of this, leaving the bottom cleanup pass for the facing head. And might as well chamfer these while we're at it. Meaning all that's left is the, Okay, it's not all great. Remember, we overshot that one bore, so we have to start this all over. Just kidding, we'll just make a new bushing, only a smidge larger. This isn't the same kind of bronze as the original, but I figure it's good enough because it's what I have. This other side still needs cleaning up, but it also needs to be square with the axis of the bushing, or it will wear unevenly. So after getting it roughly centered, I'll also indicate on the parting face that I know is square, and make some small adjustments before cutting it to the right thickness. I mean, I'd say that looks just as good as the original. Let's press them in place. Now we have the same problem as the lower spindles. Well, not a problem because I intended for this to happen, but I need to fine tune the shaft diameters here too. So it's back in the lathe to center drill the spindles, and because the situation is a little tighter this time, I've turned a new center that's smaller in diameter so it can reach down in there. Then it's just like before. Alright, that's those fit up nicely, and the correct bolts I needed have shown up, so let's put this all together. Well, it looks good, but there's a problem. It moves great tracing a circle when sweeping along the sides like over here and over here. When I get to the middle though, not so much. It just kind of binds up. But this makes sense because I have no way of actually setting the two spindle offsets evenly, so I need a way to do this. Furthermore, when I try to send it over center, the connecting arm can't keep the two spindles in time, so I also still need a way to synchronize the two. But this is heading in a great direction, even if this tool isn't as original as I thought it would be. This minor detail aside, there's still more to figure out, more ways to make this cooler, and of course more parts to make to bring this whole thing full circle. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.